Obviously, the energy market binding the world together, and none of this is happening in a vacuum. I want to bring my guest in now. He is the former U.S. Energy Secretary, Dan Brouillette. It's wonderful to have you, sir. Thanks so much for waking up early for us. Okay, so OPEC and its allies, do you believe that they're going to make a production cut in their meeting?
Well, I think they're going to give us a strong signal this week. So
they've been dangling it.
They've been dangling it, and I think, if you look at the comments of His Royal Highness Prince Abdulaziz, as well as some of the others in the kingdom, I think it's pretty clear that they're seriously considering another cut. How much? We'll have to wait and see.
What about the ramifications?
Well, obviously the market's tight right now. As we look across the world, oil is very, very tight, not only in Europe, but also in the United States and other parts. So continued high gas prices, retail gasoline prices are going to remain high. And again, as we move into the wintertime, some of that oil is going to be used for heating and other purposes in the marketplace, so it creates even more scarcity. So unfortunately for consumers, I think we're looking at higher prices for the near term.
Now, the Biden administration, of course, has been on the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to the conversation with OPEC, especially over the last few months. When you think about what happens next, we're seeing the White House encouraging U.S. oil producers to stop their exports, to really put the preference on American consumers. What does that mean for the market in your view? Is it possible for them to do this? Do you think it would help price stability?
Well, it's impossible for them to do it for a number of different reasons. When you look at the oil market, it's in backwardation. And what that means is that you can get more for the oil today than you can in the future. So you have every incentive to put it into the marketplace, not to store it. And if you think about, the publicly traded companies that are in America, very strong companies, their fiduciary responsibilities to their investors and to their shareholders.
Yeah.
So they have to put that product into the marketplace. So it's a strange request by the administration at this point to suggest that. It's also a little bit strange after you've reduced the stores of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve at the levels that you have.
Yeah.
So I think when we think about oil and we think about natural gas and all the other things, Hadley, the answer to the question of scarcity is actually right here in this conference at GasTech in Milan. It's these people who are willing to produce more. If we can produce more, create more infrastructure development in the United States, in Europe, that is the ultimate answer to the question.
Is the president just completely out of touch with the industry and frankly, the mechanics of the market?
Well, I think there's some learning that needs to occur. There's no question about that.
It's a little late in the game for some learning.
No, I think the administration came in with some preconceived notions about what they wanted to do, and they've adjusted pretty dramatically. But there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of catch-up to be done as well. So I give them credit for trying. There's still a lot of work to be done. It's a very hard process.
Okay, talk to me about what you see happening over the next several months, because obviously December is going to be a very interesting month for the markets. I'm talking, of course, about Russian sanctions.
Yeah. I think, as I think about, when you talk about Russia sanctions, you talk about potentially Iranian sanctions as they continue this conversation with, the JCPOA. The market gets really, really scarce. I mean, I hate to keep coming back to that fundamental point, but that's why we're seeing the pricing in the marketplace today. It's not because of some energy transition. It's not because of where people are in the marketplace. It's simple economics. We just don't have enough product in the marketplace. So anything governments can do to incentivize that will be helpful to consumers.
Okay, what about Europe? Because obviously with Sempra, you're working a lot with the Germans at this point. What we've heard from the Finns was that this is the Lehman Brothers moment, they said, for their energy industry. And of course, Liz Truss coming in as the next Prime Minister of the UK says she's going to have an energy plan by the end of the week, yet very short on details.
Yeah, the details are right here, though. It's companies like mine, Sempra Infrastructure, who are in the business of building not only export facilities in the United States, but in places like Mexico, where we can serve both the European and the Asian market at the same time. Yeah. We've worked very closely with Germany, and that's been a sea change. I mean, the Germans were 180 degrees from where they are today just 2 to 3, 4 years ago. But they've reached out. We want to be their ally. We want to help to develop infrastructure, be it regas, FSRU in the northern part of Germany, or pipeline infrastructure throughout the continent to allow us to move this important product more easily and efficiently.
It's a mistake, in your view, for the Germans to decide that now is the time to continue phasing out their nuclear facilities?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
In terms of phasing out their nuclear facilities in Germany?
Yeah, look, I think it's, obviously they're going to make a policy decision, but as the economies grow, they need more energy, not less. And any way you can develop that energy, that it's, especially like nuclear, it's it's no carbon, it's carbon free. It allows you to meet environmental goals that are very important to the Germans. I would suggest that you want to be adding energy, not taking it away at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And think about this a little bit more broadly for me, because there's an emergency meeting of EU leaders tomorrow in Brussels where they're talking about the electricity market. They're trying to figure out a way to keep costs down. But when you describe this as basically bailing out energy companies and then, frankly, bailing out the citizens in terms of allowing them to have a little bit more leeway on what they can have to pay for their energy costs, it feels rather like a Ponzi scheme to me.
You can describe it that way. There's no question about that. I mean, if you continue to, what's happening is governments, one of the easier policy levers, if you will, is that you can pass a bill, appropriate money, and give money to citizens to pay their electricity bills.
Yeah.
If you do that, it obviously has an inflationary impact, but it alleviates the immediate pain of not being able to pay the electricity bill. But the money just moves in a circle. So it just goes from the consumer to the electricity company, the electricity company.
This is not a long-term solution.
No, it is not a long-term solution.
Absolutely.
No.
So when you think about this, Dan, taking a step back, how much trouble do you see Europe in for the foreseeable future? They could take years to dig out of this hole. Where are we in that?
This is a really big problem. Right now, we're focused on energy for all the obvious reasons. The challenge, however, is that if we don't resolve this quickly, it begins to cascade into the industrial sector. It begins to cascade into the agricultural sector. At that point, we move into, near crisis phase, if not full-on crisis phase. And that's the real danger. So for policymakers, they have to get busy to find solutions to some of the issues. I would suggest that the issues right now maybe look more like what Germany did. Minister Habeck, I think, did a great job of eliminating all of the regulatory constraints that was keeping production from coming online. I think policymakers need to look at that, not only in Europe, but perhaps around the world.
So right now what we're seeing is President Putin waging an energy war on the West. In your mind, is there anything that we could be doing better to alleviate the pain?
Produce more. That's really the answer, is to produce more. You have to offset the production that he has, taken offline, but you have to meet him on this economic war field that he's created. And we can do that. I mean, we have the ability to do that certainly within the United States. I mean, we're still roughly 1 million, maybe 1.5 million barrels short per day of what we were producing just 2.5, 3 years ago. So I think it's very important that we get back to that number. I think it's very important that others in the North American continent, perhaps Canada and others, produce more. And again, to the extent that we do that, that's where we meet Putin head on in this economic war.